And it was just like I was a part of everything and one with the universe and one with God. And it was kind of like knowing everything, but at the same time not needing to know anything. It's not like I had to think or, there was no effort involved. Everything was this wonderful, spiritual, magical flow.
Hello, passionate listeners and watchers. Welcome to Passion Harvest. Thank you so much for joining me wherever you are in the world right now. I am Luisa, your host, and our guest today is Laurence Brock. Laurence Brock died in a horrific car accident and went to heaven. During Laurence's near-death experience, he encountered Jesus and understood an all-knowing and all-loving God. He returned 3 days later with an ability to heal. Laurence Brock is an ordained minister, counsellor, energy healer, and spiritual intuit. This is his story and this is his passion. Laurence Brock, so honored and excited to have you on the show today. Welcome to Passion Harvest.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy sharing my story. There's something it just connects me into this wonderful place talking about it. So it's always a pleasure.
Oh, well, I can't wait to hear about it. I'd love to get started. I've already, in the introduction, I mentioned that you did have a near-death experience, a profound one.
Yes.
However you feel called to share that with the audience, that experience, that'd be amazing.
I came back east to visit my parents. I drove with my roommate because he was from the same area as me, and we drove in his car. And we heard about a party someone we knew from high school was having, and I took my mom's car to go to the party. And while we were there, we were drinking and smoking pot, and I decided to leave my car there kind of in a way to go back and flirt with the girl who was having the party the next day. And so I had my friend drive me back, and almost back to my parents' house, I realized my sister needed the car for the next morning for work. So I had him drive me back. I got the car. I definitely shouldn't have been driving. I was definitely too drunk to drive. And I remember walking towards the door to leave the party. I don't remember walking out of the party. I don't remember getting in my car. The next thing I remember was being out of my body, floating in the white light, looking down on the car that was so smashed. When I looked at it, it was surprising that I survived. And my body was leaning against a tree like this, sitting on the ground with a police officer crouching over me. My experience was very kinesthetic and feeling, just everything felt so nice. It didn't bother me at all that my head was cracked open or the car. And it was just a feeling like everything was good with me on the planet Earth. Just everything was so good. And that's not quite it. It wasn't this big ta-da celebration kind of thing, but it was just everything was so peaceful and balanced and just right and proper. So I was in the white light. Behind me, there was a big circle of light. And within that, there was a person, but just like a different shade of white. And so there was no features or anything. And then even another shade of white, like kind of radiating off. Then that voice, the person behind me, and sometimes people, not too long ago, someone said, so you could see behind you, but it wasn't really like I could see behind me. It was just like I knew. So it's funny because part of my spiritual practice, it really taught me a lot recently after this person asked me if I could see behind me, because it wasn't like I needed to look. It was just like I knew. And it was just like I was a part of everything and one with the universe and one with God. And it was kind of like knowing everything, but at the same time, not needing to know anything. It's not like I had to think or, there was no effort involved. Everything was this wonderful, spiritual, magical flow. The being behind me said, you have to go back. Your father wants you to stay. I knew as soon as he said that the father he was talking about was God, not my physical father. I went back into my body and came to 3 days later in the hospital.
Gosh.
The way I explain it all came later. So this was in 1976. There was no internet. I had never heard of a near-death experience. I never heard of anything like this. The only closest thing was, I really like sci-fi TV shows like Star Trek and things like that. And, you know, I mentioned it to a few people, but not much, because some people would look at me like you're crazy. I
Yeah.
I knew that it happened, but it was hard to believe in my mind that it actually happened. So after that, I was in the hospital for a while. Then I went back out to Colorado. My mom kind of bribed me and convinced me to move back east and work for my dad in this electrical contracting company. One day I was sitting in my apartment before cell phones. So someone knocked on the door. It didn't seem like now if someone knocks on the door, it's a little unusual if I don't know, because if someone would text. So I answered the door. There was this beautiful woman there, and she said, "I'm the sister of a friend of yours from Colorado. She told me some interesting things about you, and I want to talk to you." So she introduced me. In talking, she started talking about my near-death experience and talking about this Sufi sheikh who's a spiritual teacher in the mystical sect of the Islamic religion. And she introduced me to him, and more miraculous things happened. It's really great.
Wow. Um, I'm just so interested how, that sort of all knowing. We think in our human terms that you have to look around to see who's behind you. It's almost if through the vibration you sensed everything. And you intuitively knew it was the Father, as in God or something like that.
Yeah, all the things you're saying would require almost doing something, and it was not. So yes, it kind of could be described like that, but it was so much more just knowing. And even, you know, like now if I know something, I have to think. In that, I didn't even have to think. It was just like knowing, you know, it's it is hard to, but that's a good way. It is like just knowing instantly without even making the small effort of thinking. That's what it was like.
Yeah, and it is so hard to articulate in words. Certainly, there are no words. But I'm going to ask you a question because we're talking in
Yeah, that's
words.
good. Yeah.
What did the Father, as you term him, I'm
Yes.
assuming, what did he feel like, or what did you sense from that connection?
Well, like I said, it was very kinesthetic. The words that I used to describe what happened came when I started hearing the Sufi sheikh talk to me about things. So he started to talk to me first right away about Mary. And it seemed a little funny to me because he was Islamic and I think of Mary as Christian, but the truth is, in the Islamic religion, Mary is a really big part of it. And he talked about Mary's love for God and her ability to open up to God and let the Christ energy come through her. And it was like, whoa, that whole thing that he was talking about is what I experienced. Then he started to talk about Jesus, and I knew the light being behind me was Jesus. What Jesus was saying to me, the Father, was like the supreme God, or God, however you term that for yourself.
And many near-death experiences speak about the feeling of absolute unconditional love and
Yeah,
acceptance.
definitely.
You felt this as well?
Yes, yeah, and it's been my journey ever since to do that as much as possible here, and I do get glimpses of it. And like I said, it was funny that the thing about being a part of it in the last few months has really improved my meditation to a whole new level, because somehow it took me all these years and I don't even want to say I got it, because I know there's been many times over the years, oh, I got it. And then, like a year later, I really get it. And that's like, I didn't get it then. So I'm sure there's more to get now, but something about that thing not having to make an effort during meditation to connect into that love and that knowledge that it just is. And our spatial, our thing of needing space, physical references is not there in the spirit. So it's kind of hard to let that go and just kind of be like, it's like being all of the universe and then at the same time just the smallest thing.
Amazing. It took you many, many years to process the whole experience with assistance.
Yes.
Did you receive any other messages from Jesus or the Father?
Not during my near-death experience. I mean, part of what happened was I became very connected to this, and definitely over the years, I've learned how to increase that. So there are times a lot for myself. And, when I work with people, I get all sorts of messages and information about things about other lifetimes, about people's karma, their destiny, so many things. It's great.
This is fantastic. And obviously, from when you woke up in the hospital since that time,
Yeah.
you had certain gifts or healing gifts or capabilities. Do you mind discussing that with the audience?
Yes. Looking back, they were very small back then compared to now because I have dedicated my life to studying this and learning more. The only thing that was very concrete was my hands became very warm when I touch people, and that still happens. The other things, my intuition increased, but again, I did not know what to make of this at all. It was like, I don't know, just imagine not knowing anything about anything spiritual and then having this experience. And it, like, now you look online, it's there, there's TV shows about it. There, it's not just Star Trek. There's hundreds of TV shows about it. It's just everyone's talking about it, um, so I was a little reluctant and shy, embarrassed, all that stuff. And
Yes. And I love that even though at the time you thought it was weird and strange and you were embarrassed to talk about it, but you knew in your heart that it was a real experience. It wasn't a
yes,
figment of your imagination or drugs or whatever it might be. It was real.
yes, and I would be lying if I didn't say there was some doubt there. Even now, I mean, spiritual experiences, sometimes I'm just not in that place of connecting to it. And I wonder, is that real? And I know it is, but that's part of the process of.
And when I asked you the question before, did you receive any other messages from Jesus or God? You said
Yes,
no, not at that time. So
yes.
do you mind sharing some of the messages that you have received since that near-death experience?
Um, yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, one thing that is always present is to embrace your gifts and and that God's love is everywhere. And that those are big. A lot of the messages I get are very personal about the people I'm working with.
Right.
So, but there is something always urging me on to do more, to remember that that God is inside of me, that there's this goodness, there's something good in people. And, you know, again, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's just like knowing there is good. And even, again, putting it into words automatically, it's not quite it because it's just this seeing good in sometimes even the worst people.
Why do you think that the Father asked you or said to return to the physical form?
Um, that is a good question. Well, I'd like to think because of what I've done since then. I mean, I've helped a lot of people. I think being of service is really important. I'd like to think that, even saying that, it seems kind of grandiose, but I guess because I wasn't finished with my life and that I was supposed to progress further. And my daughter wasn't born then. And she's a great gift to the world too.
Yeah.
So, that's a big question. Yeah.
I'd love to talk more about what you do for clients, your
Okay.
healing and how you receive intuitive guidance for your clients.
So the energy, the love, and the healing, and knowing that I experienced in my near-death experience, I've learned how to bring that in, hold it like through my body, so like I work online a lot, but I'm holding my hands up like this, like the energy seems to come through. Sometimes it just comes in for the person. And so I'll see blocks for them. They could be blocks in their body, emotional blocks. A lot of times there's just negative energy, sometimes from other people. There are also negative forms that are the negative parts, things that are in spirit that can clear. Sometimes these are actually, those things are almost always, and same with patterns from past lives that I can clear. And it is just by, it is almost like praying, but again, it would be the comparable part of the knowing that I was talking about. It's praying would be too much of an effort for what it is. There's part of it of moving into that loving and knowing that the person I'm working with is this wonderful, healthy, abundant person. And I can see that in the person, and it just helps them start to unfold in that.
Fantastic. I mean, I think the two greatest powers we have are love and intention,
Yeah,
really, through directed consciousness.
definitely. It's a great thing.
And you
I,
receive messages for the client. Do they come to you just telepathically and you speak them out to the client?
yes, again, telepathically would be not quite it,
Right.
because it
I'm
is,
thinking in human terms,
yes,
maybe.
yes.
Okay.
I mean, that we have to use those words, but, and, yeah, so I normally don't tell the people their future. Sometimes people ask, and I've just learned from certain experiences and that it kind of interferes with people's unfoldment a lot. And so I don't, that's not what I do. Once in a while, people really press me, and there's only been a few times since, and I've been doing this for close to 40 years, that I saw something in the future and it was 100% going to happen. Usually I see things and it's like, it's an 80, 90% chance. So, um, but I've learned not to do that. So what I'm talking to people about is healing them, sometimes physically. Their spiritual unfoldment is really what it's about. Even if there's physical healing, if there's emotional healing or mental healing, it is all about their spiritual unfoldment, opening up to their potential of God's love and glory. And a lot of times it has to do with manifesting their skills, their abilities, their gifts.
And I guess for the audience, for people that are listening, they might, I'm just asking questions for them, but
Yeah.
how do we manifest our purpose or our skills, as you mentioned? How do we do this?
Yeah. So part of it is to look at what things you're good at, whether, and try not to. So our mind tends to, like, if we're good at something right away, trying to go from the small part to the big picture. Try not to do that, and find all the small parts of things you're good at and let it, and be patient how it all fits together. Okay. Because normally, we say you're a good writer, like right away, oh, I should write, I should be a fiction writer, or a writer actually might be a lawyer. So, but don't jump to the end there. Just let it be there and go with the small parts of what you're good at and practice those things and see what unfolds naturally for you. What we want and what makes us happy is a very important part of it, because those things come from our people talk about our gut, that comes from there. If we're always in our head doing the right and proper thing, that might not be it. So there's what's in our head, there's what's in our heart, and there's what's in our gut. And we want to check all these things and work them together. Looking at your positive qualities and find ways to do those in the world. Try to look, at the good in yourself and the good in other people. Um, it's interesting because I used to do research about happiness, and one thing that, and there's studies done about this, but the study that's coming to mind is, unless your financial situation is so bad you don't have the basic necessities for life, how wealthy you are does not seem to affect how happy you are. And so that's a good thing to look at. But so when you're expressing from your heart, you're expressing who you are. That, I think that's what makes people happy. If you have a job and you enjoy it, that goes a really long way.
And it's almost like a change in attitude as well. We choose to be happy. As you said, if we have the basics, food, water, and shelter,
Yeah,
we can then actualize and move on.
there definitely is times it's a choice in there to focus on the good things, but it is a choice because usually there are a lot of good things around. Biologically, we're kind of designed to notice what's wrong as a safety mechanism. So it does take sometimes training to be focusing more on the good things.
I'm sure you get this question asked very often. Why are we here? What is our purpose?
I think our purpose has to do with expressing our qualities and learning to love ourselves, and be forgiving, letting the things go, the things we mess up. And, part of us, it's funny because not just one part of it, it's like all the parts of us know this except for our mind, which is what we mostly relate to. That part doesn't seem to know, but our gut knows, our spirit knows, our soul, all these things know this, but part of us doesn't. So it is, how do you get that into your brain? How do you get it into your thoughts? How do you get it into your beliefs? And a lot of it is practice.
And what practice would you recommend to become more intuitive, more connected with all those aspects with our higher self or soul?
Yeah.
What's
Well,
your advice?
yeah,
Sorry.
meditation and journal writing are the two things I consider main things. I mean, physical exercise is helpful. I have some other more specific exercises there, and I've made YouTube videos about them for people to see. There is one called Your Ideal Inner Image that has a lot to do with manifesting what you want in the world, but coming from that place of what's your inner experience? Like, what are your positive qualities and what can you do that is doing that? You know, that I do this, I've always been kind of sensitive. And when I was young, it was kind of frowned upon for men to be sensitive. Even now, a lot of people say it's okay, but in certain situations it's not. So, luckily I found a way to express my nurturing and caring and the sensitivity that I have.
Um, well, yes, you are very sensitive, which is a wonderful thing. Um, do you have any doubt that when our body dies, we continue, our consciousness continues?
No, I have no doubt.
So what would be your advice to those that and many people are afraid of dying?
Um, well, talk to people who have spiritual experience. But there's on my YouTube channel, there's what's called the basic soul meditation. A lot of times people do that. You can get an experience of connecting into spirit. And usually when people do, when I work with people, they get that connection. It's like, and really everyone has it some. Even when I talk to people who say they don't believe in God or anything like that, they do believe in something beyond the physical body. A lot of times it's just finding the right words and they go, oh, that's what you mean. I have a friend who's like a genius scientist who does these things with computers, and he's always saying he doesn't believe in God, but I mean, he is so smart, like he connects into something. So, and sometimes when I talk to him, he'll smile like he knows what I'm talking about, but he would never admit there's God.
Well, everyone's on their own sort of journey, I guess.
Yeah,
And what's the name of your YouTube channel for those that are listening or watching?
Dr. Laurence Brock.
Okay, there you go. I guess probably my final question, and then I'll leave it over to you.
Okay.
How can we live our best life in this incarnation?
Yeah, well, I'll go back to the qualities, like, find your best qualities, whether it's, being intellectual, being sensitive, if you're a good cook, if you're, uh, you know, if you're beautiful physically, like, everything can be a gift. Everything is a gift, all these good things. If you're, I'm not thinking if you're a painter, whatever that is, just really express those things. A lot of times it's smaller things though, like, well, for me, being sensitive. I mean, now it's a big thing, but when I was young, it was something kind of hidden. So luckily, I learned to embrace that. There is, it's kind of like trust who you are and what comes to you naturally. You know, we're brought up, get a job, do these things, but it's usually, do you like to talk a lot? Do you like to not talk? What kind of clothes do you like to wear? All these things that could seem insignificant compared to creating this wonderful thing are a part of it. So you honor and respect those things. And, sometimes you have to adjust some of the things that are perhaps not as important, but to trust that that is where there's information in there, and that those things can come out and show you a wonderful thing that you can do.
Yes, I absolutely agree, because we are all special and unique, and
Yeah,
I think we all should shine our uniqueness.
definitely.
I guess, is there any other thing you would like to share with the Passion Harvest audience, or perhaps you have some guidance for them that you would like to talk about on a final note?
I think this thing of, don't let your passion and the things you're good at go, whatever that is. Sometimes you have to have a job that is not that exact thing, so find another expression of that. A lot of times, even in a job that you might not like, there are ways to express kindness. There are ways to express some of your positive qualities. And if you're creative in your thinking, that I think that's the way to go. But meditation and journal writing, meditation and journal writing, meditation and journal writing, those two things are just really important for self-discovery. It's the quickest way. Those are the quickest tools to, if you're feeling stuck, those are the things you can do the most for yourself.
And the advice you've given is amazing, and it's just so simple and so true. Sometimes the simplest messages are absolutely
Yeah.
the best.
And sometimes it's not so easy. So it does take being gentle with yourself. Like, for the times, sometimes it's hard. It's easy for me to say it when I'm talking about someone else, but in my life there are struggles, and it's always work to get back on track. And some days I'm just not as good as other days. And so those days, just be gentle and loving with yourself and do the best that you can.
Well, great way to end the show, Laurence Brock. Thank you
Yes.
so much for being on Passion Harvest.
Oh,
I
you're
love
welcome.
your
It's a pleasure.
tips and insights. They're so simple but wonderful.
I like to think so. You're welcome, and thank you for
Thank you
having
so
me.
much. Bye-bye. If you liked this episode, please do subscribe for weekly, passionate, inspirational interviews.